I know that every day somebody's getting that new diagnosis and they are just as afraid as I was. There is help and there is hope.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and for you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Diversity and Inclusion Speaker Series. I'm your host, Lenny Hernandez, and I'm here with two incredible people, Jen Johnmeyer and Jerry, a resident at the Princeton Senior Living. These two incredible humans are cancer survivors, and that is what our topic is about today. I don't want to take up any more time. I want to throw it to you all. Jen Johnmeyer, tell us a little bit about yourself and why this topic means so much to you.
Absolutely. So I'm a 12-year cancer survivor. Technically, I guess a 7-year cancer survivor. The first 5 years after you're cleared, you're considered to be in remission. So once you hit that 5-year mark, it's so important to hit that, because it means that you're considered a survivor. Considered that, you have beat it, at least for now. So I got my diagnosis when I was 35. I was, no history, not prepared in any way. But it absolutely changed my life for the better, ultimately. And, that's the important lesson, I think, in this story, what it means to be a survivor and what survivorship is. So.
Wow, that's incredible. 35. That is
35.
So young. That's
yeah.
so young.
Yeah, I started early and hopefully finished early.
Boom, boom, boom.
Right.
Jerry, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my husband and I both decided that we should go and have a colonoscope done. We were hearing a lot of publicity about it. He went first, came out fine. A week later, I went, and the surgeon who was looking with the scope at your colon found what he said was about the size of his thumb and a lump. And after finding that, your primary care then sends you to a pathologist where they take a spot and cut into your tissue and then have it done with a biopsy. And then when they do that, they determine if that lump he found was cancerous or was not. So after you do that, they assign you someone that they work with as a surgeon, and your surgeon then, while you're getting ready to have surgery, assigns you to a oncologist. And so until then, this is the person who is going to take over and be in charge. That was in 2003, and that was the cancer that first determined that I did have cancer, and that has been 20 years ago. And like she said, 5 years is determined. If it doesn't come back, that you are cured of that cancer. No guarantee that others won't come. I did have 2 other types in the breast, and I'll talk to you about that later.
I had breast cancer. And I, obviously at 35, you're not thinking about cancer yet. I wasn't thinking about much of anything when I was 35. Important later for talking about how it changed my life. But I just had a little, I didn't do self-checks even, it just was not a thing in my life that even though I knew I was supposed to be doing these things, I was like, that sounds like a job for future me. That doesn't feel like anything I should be worrying about right now. So I had gone on a fishing trip with my husband and a couple of our friends one weekend. And we got home and we were, just getting everything unloaded. And I was so tired and I stretched and yawned. And as I did so, I felt just the weirdest, ping. I don't know how to describe it. It was just like a single point of radiation of pain, coming from my right breast. And I was like, that's weird. And then I was like, where's the heart? Is this the heart attack? What is happening right now? And so I reached, reflexively reached to touch, and I felt what it felt like a BB, like under my skin, which I immediately thought that's weird too. So I had gone back to school at the time. I was getting my bachelor's degree. And so I took advantage of the student health center to go in and say like, hey, I have this weird thing and I'm sure it's nothing. Just want to get it checked out. And then they were like, we're also sure it's nothing. We'll do a couple, we'll do a little ultrasound or something, but it should be fine. They sent me to get an ultrasound, and I was told at that time I was all clear, and to monitor for symptoms. Symptoms meaning, did it grow? Has it grown? Do you notice any kind of change? A couple months later, I remembered to check again and noticed that it had grown a lot, like to the point where I was like, that's scary. So I went back in. They said, we're going to schedule you for a mammogram and another ultrasound. I went in for the ultrasound and the mammogram. They told me they were going to biopsy it. And so I went, I took a final, I went in, had the screenings done, set the biopsy up for next week, which was like 4 days before Christmas. Thought I was just going to have, they were like, it's a cyst. It's definitely a cyst. Like, we're not worried about it. We are going to biopsy it just to be on the safe side. So I woke up from my little surgery, and I remember them saying, the surgeon saying, we got it all, and it was cancer. And that's basically when I stopped listening. It was like static filled my head. I was sure that I was just still loopy and I wasn't hearing them correctly. So I completely missed the part where they went on to say, because of my age, it was going to be very aggressively treated with chemotherapy and radiation. And so that was the beginning. I don't want to run on and on, but that's how I first learned about it. What about you, Jerry?
Well, when I learned, it was really a surprise because no one in our family had cancer. I was the first one. I have 4 sisters, and they have children, and I have one daughter, and none of the family members on my mother or father's side had cancer. And I thought, oh well, this I'll have to deal with this. But my family was very supportive because it was such a unique illness for the family members. And I had an oncologist that was just next to wonderful. I mean, if you have to say somebody's an angel in disguise, she was. And she had come from a foreign country and had to go through oncology again when she came here to the United States. So she was well trained, knew what she was doing. And when we talked, I told her, I knew cancer was supposed to be an expensive kind of thing. And that's what they want to talk to you about. You're going to have to figure a way to afford this. And I told her money was not a problem. My husband and I had good occupations, but I had a grandson who was studying to be an airline pilot at the college, had 2 more years. I would like to see him graduate, make sure that there's money for him. And the next day when I went in and talked to her again, she'd already got me lined up for a study down at MD Anderson in Houston, Texas, because she said she knew I told her about my grandson. So sometimes when you tell people things that are a little bit off, you never know how it's going to help you. And I was put after the surgery on medication, and it makes you as sick as you can be. There's no point in talking about that you're not going to be ill, because you are going to be. You're going to feel. This was a every 3-week regiment. So as soon as you just about got to feeling better, your 3 weeks were up. It was time for your next round. And so I was given medication from MD Anderson that was relatively new. It was a tablet form. So they also do what they call a port on you to put the medicines into. So I had medicine every 3 weeks through the port, making you sick as you can be. And every day I took one of these pills from MD Anderson, and I was able to tolerate that. And that was probably the reason why I survived through the colon cancer, is because of that medication. And you've got to let the doctor know where you are, where you're coming from. You can't just say, oh, we'll take care of it, because it's an expensive kind of process. And my family, of course, they're all, anyway, I needed help. We were, most of us, trained to be teachers. And we got a couple of lawyers and a couple of doctors thrown in, but they were willing in any way that they could help. But that's how my family was impacted. Anything we needed or were living in our house at the time was going to be provided. So I'm glad I told the doctor, that if it's going to cost, that's not going to bother us right now. It's not going to bother us. But if it happens, it happens. I mean, you don't ask for this. It comes to you. You don't say, well, this is my next thing I'm going to try out. I was 69 years old, and they did the surgery in first week of November, and then by Christmas I was able to go to some of the family activities. So that's how we were affected.
Got it. Yeah. I kind of can provide a little bit of a counterpoint to that story. I had kind of a poor person's cancer story. So I was not in good shape. I had been fortunate that a coworker of mine, a previous coworker, had wanted to, she and her husband, he had recently died of cancer, and they had wanted to help me finish my degree. So she said that it was his wish to help me get through school. So I had just started back to school. I had to immediately take a semester off. But I did have that going for me, which was also helpful in that she was a 2-time breast cancer survivor. Yeah. So she was there for me to help me not be as afraid. My husband was a union boilermaker, so the other thing we had going for us was excellent insurance. So that helped so much. And what was working against us was we had recently decided we wanted to start a family together. So what I did was they agreed to let me have 2 months to go through try to go through fertility treatments, freeze some eggs, and then I had that procedure done on March 1st, and on March 2nd, I had my first chemotherapy treatment. I was originally supposed to have 8 chemotherapy treatments. It was every other week, followed by 33 radiation treatments. I had been, because I was so young and they wanted to treat it aggressively, like I mentioned before, I had ductal carcinoma in situ, which is the standard, pretty common diagnosis for breast cancer, and was HER2 negative. So I didn't have a lot, it was definitely not a genetic diagnosis. I had genetic testing done. My sisters were both very eager to learn the results of that. It was not a genetic cancer. So then that leaves you to wonder how, it's as terrible as cancer is. I find it also very fascinating how cells can just decide they're going to start replicating, and what that means, like genetic codes. But for what it meant for me was I had to have a lot of treatments, and I was not prepared. So I had, my husband tried to take as much time off as he could because he traveled for his job, and was able to be at all but one of my treatments. But I lost my hair the day before my second chemo. I was at a restaurant meeting up with an old friend, and I went to the restroom and I brushed my hair back from my face, and a big ball of hair was in my hand when I finished. And I was like, I'm not going to stick around and wait for this to finish happening. We went home and shaved my head that night. That was the weirdest part, I think, for me. Like, that's what made it feel real. I was also very sick. They called my chemo regimen, they called the Red Devil, adriamycin. And it makes you very, very sick. I also lost my sense of taste, which was, if you love food like I do, that's the most devastating thing. probably even worse than the hair. So fortunately I was able to get a wig that kind of fit, because I had a day job at a children's hospital and I didn't want to scare the kids. So I would put the wig on when I went into the hospital, and then as soon as I got to my car, I would throw it in the back seat because I hated that thing. But my son was in 8th grade when I was diagnosed. That was another part that was really scary for me. I remember thinking, if I could just see my son like grow up, like that's all I really want. And I did. So that was really good. But he was so chill about it. He was so funny. And like, I would ask him to do things because I didn't feel good. And he's like, if I empty the dishwasher right now, you're going to expect it in the future. So why would I do that? Just anything to keep, I would give that advice to anybody trying to help somebody through cancer. Try to keep them laughing. Like if you can't laugh, you're going to cry. You may as well laugh through it. And we had a lot of laughs. So I think it brought my family and I closer together for sure. And it really made us all appreciate how little time we really have. And then
while we're doing this cancer chemo, it takes about 5 hours every 3 weeks. So you're not there for a few minutes. So one way you can be supported is your family members can come. I had friends that came to the Kansas City Cancer Center and gave cookies. I knew her through a church group. I had no idea she did this in her part-time. This grandson that was in college would come, bring different girlfriends, and just be there to support you. And once you start out the procedure, you see your doctor, and you might have to wait an hour before that occurs. And then after you see your doctor, they will decide if you're well enough to have the chemo that day. And she'll send you to the lab where they will take blood work. And the blood work is all of your chemicals that make up the blood. And they have a way to test that out in about 15 minutes. And then if that be the case that you're okay in the blood work, I used to show up with real low hemoglobin, and that wasn't a good thing because they don't want to mess with you then. So you may have to wait, say 2 or 3 days. They'll give you some other medications, wait 2 or 3 days and then go back. But then once they connected to this port that has been set up on your body so that you can take the chemicals, they're put into a bag, and these are controlled by 2 nurses who make sure that the bag is proper with the amount of chemical you should have. There's been problems, I believe, in Kansas City where the amount of chemotherapy was not adequate, and people were having trouble because they weren't given the right amount that they truly needed. So the Kansas City Cancer Center had 2 nurses, and generally they give you something that's supposed to calm your body down in a little bag. Take about 15 minutes for it to be absorbed. And then they will give you a big bag, which is probably 12 inches long. And you take that, and that takes a while. You can't rush it. You can't say, I'm going to go get my hair done. Those kind of things take a back set to cancer treatment. And if you don't show up for your appointment, they tell you cancer doesn't wait for anyone. They're not real nice and try to be real gentle with you. They more or less let you know that if you have an appointment to be here, you're going to be here, or you'll have a real good reason for not being in the location. But if everything works out, you survive. And if it doesn't work out, you know what happens. And so you make your own choices. They don't force you to do something you don't want to do. But I've seen people come in to take radiation and just cry. They feel so bad about it. And others sitting there laughing. They got 2 or 3 people from their family or their friends laughing with them, and their 5 hours, I think, go a lot faster and better than when you're sitting there resenting, that you're the person. I took the chemo for my first cancer, which was the colon cancer, and after 5 years, everything was fine. And in 2014, 10 years later, during a mammogram, they picked up a cancer of the right breast, and they were able to work with that. That one, they gave me radiation with after we did the chemo. The problem with radiation is if you think cancer's ever coming back, you can only take radiation one time. The second time, your body cannot take it. So that was one of the other things I took to go along with it. But each time you take chemotherapy, and then 3 years ago, they found another spot in the right breast, and they realized this cancer I had was going to be returning. It'd been there once after the colon cancer. And in that one, I had a whole group deciding what they wanted to do with me. And as far as I was concerned, I was devastated. I had worked all my life as a special ed teacher, and I had different college degrees. So I'd been challenged before, but never had I been challenged when they wanted to do a mastectomy on me. And that was 3 years ago this October. I had the same surgeon as part of my team, same oncologist, the same pathologist, and they all said the only thing that will keep me going is you have to have a mastectomy. And it was a decision when they start cutting on your body. You make the decision. They don't tell you you have to. They just tell you what will. So we had that done on the right side. So I was to see my cancer oncologist a week ago. Nothing has come back. I take a pill every day. And as long as I take that pill, and you have to take it for at least 5 years, and I've had 3 now, so I have 2 more. So I think, well, there's 2 more years because it's supposed to keep you cancer free for the other side. So, you learn all kinds of things when you're dealing with cancer. You learn how they make you a number. You're a 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you start out as a 1, that's pretty gentle. And you start out with a 2, but most people don't start off with 1s and 2s. They end up with 3. 4 is devastating. But the whole idea is you've got to listen to what they say. You don't listen to grandma down the street or anything like that. You've got to listen. If you don't like your oncologist, you better get another one because you have to trust them. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I had not had a mastectomy, but I did have stage 1. They did remove some lymph nodes just to do some additional testing, but they recommended a lumpectomy for me. So that's what I had. They're very clear that once you have radiation in that side, if it does return in that same breast, you're going to have them removed, which I was fine with. Like, you get to the point, you're like, do I need this that much? Like, I'd rather live. So sorry. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about resources. I think it's very scary to receive a new diagnosis, regardless of your age, or anything you've heard from anyone else who's gone through it. I was very happy to, I feel like there's a special kind of personality, very angelic people that work in oncology. The nurses were amazing. My initial oncologist, you had just mentioned, like, switching oncologist. I did switch oncologists to the one that I still have to this day. But they were all incredible in letting me know, hey, there's a program called Look Good, Feel Better. And that's for, people who are suffering with extreme appearance changes due to cancer and just want to feel like they're still human. That's where I got, they give you makeup, they give you wigs. I could not have cared less about makeup when I was going through my treatment, but it was really nice to have people that were really looking out for you. We had a local cancer relief agency in my county. They would help with things as small as, remember one of my fellow cancer people going through treatment with me, their refrigerator went out and they got them a new refrigerator. They'll help pay for your gas to your treatments. I had to drive, about 50 miles one way to get treatment, which when you're driving that 5 days a week for radiation, that really adds up when you don't, and I didn't have money. So that was incredibly helpful. They'll also offer to pay if you have to stay in a motel, like if you have to go further away and be gone or if your family needs to be with you and you're in a town other than your hometown, they'll provide vouchers for motel stays. There's almost an endless number of groups who will also band together to bring your family meals. I had, because I was in such a small town, we had an incredible outpouring of support of people who are like, here's a casserole, here's something for, I had, 3 teenage boys in the house and they're like, here's some food for the kids. Because the last thing I wanted to do was cook. I couldn't really, I was sick a lot. I couldn't taste anything. And so it was really nice to have that. Financial assistance. There are just so many programs and it's just getting better and better. That's why since I was sick, I've joined several local groups. I'm working on an event with the American Cancer Society right now. I'm part of Making Strides Against Breast Cancer because I know that every day, 1 in 8 for breast cancer, for example, somebody's getting that new diagnosis and they are just as afraid as I was, just as afraid as you were. And there is help and there is hope. And then I also think family and friends, like I mentioned, I had people that were bringing me meals. I think it's worse to be a caretaker than it is to go through cancer. When my mom got cancer a few years later, it's the most helpless, awful feeling because you want to help and you don't know how you can help. And even though I had cancer myself, I felt ill-equipped to be, to be there for her because I was so scared myself. But the best thing you can do is just love the person, like just knowing that I had support, that I had people that loved me, that I had people who were willing to give me a hug and tell me it was going to be okay. And my sisters were really great. My sister Shannon did so much for me. Like if I was telling her, okay, today I can taste chicken, go. She was finding some chicken to bring to me before that went away. There are just like so many things that may seem like little things that are actually big things to somebody going through those hardships. So.
I agree with her in the fact that you can't isolate yourself because you have cancer. You got to go out there and still do what you can. And there are places here in town that give you wigs. You can go to, there's one in Independence on Lynn Avenue, there about 43rd, and they give you scarves. They give you but just about anything that a cancer person would need. They also give you, like, if you have trouble eating because you are feeling a little bit under the weather, they have like different kinds of things that they give you that if you could go in there and get them. And it's amazing. I went in with a friend once and we had the best time picking out a wig. I mean, it was a fun kind of a thing because my hair, like hers, was also starting to come out. So there's also like the Kansas City Cancer Center now is one of the national places where before when I first started, it wasn't. And now the Kansas City Cancer Center has a place here in Lee Summit that you can go to and have it on colleges. And if you don't have the finances to support the things you probably need for survival, they'll take care of you. I mean, other people make donations and they say use it as needed, and that's what they do. So it's not like you can't find some help, because the help is there, but you've got to go out and reach it. You can't expect it to come to you unless they know about you. But as far as your friends supporting someone who's terminal, we've all had to do that, especially when we've gone in to the code to take the code scope messages. We found out that so and so's not there anymore. When we go in 2 weeks later, or 3 weeks later, they're not here. And when you saw them last, they look good. You saw some who've come in for their first treatment, and that's real traumatic. And I know I went through the same thing. You're scared to death. You figure that chemical is the worst thing, but you got to do it. And that's and you have to tell people, that I have cancer, rather than just try to hide it. Because when you hear about cancer, it's the big C.
Yeah.
That's the big C. And we're all scared to death of it. But once you face it, it's not so bad. I just,
It really isn't. That's
Yeah.
the best thing about it, is that, having it when I was young, I was not, I wasn't taking my life too seriously at the time. I was just like kind of living for the now. I was like, what am I going to do in the future? I wasn't very happy. I felt kind of like, I was going through this thing in my mid-30s where I was like, is this all there is? Is it ever going to get better? And that diagnosis made me appreciate my life so much more. I did end up going back to school. I got my bachelor's. I kept going. I got my master's. I got to see my son graduate from high school, from college. I danced at his wedding. And I love every minute of it. In fact, I'm wearing a shirt. Warren Zevon, he wrote the song Werewolves of London and Hit Somebody, just has a bunch of great hits. And he's friends with former talk show host David Letterman. He was on the show after he had gotten his cancer diagnosis. And Dave Letterman asked him how he felt now and how he felt about life. And he said that he enjoys every sandwich. So I'm wearing this shirt that says, enjoy every sandwich. And that's what I do. Like, I try to enjoy, I try to stop myself, think, like 12 years ago, you didn't even know if you were going to be here. And life is so beautiful every single day. And that's what I would tell anybody facing a new diagnosis. It is this, they call it the C word. It's like steeped in fear. It's designed to, kind of make you think that it's a death sentence, but it can actually change your life for the better too. It's not for the faint of heart. It definitely made me start advocating for myself, because like you said, nobody's going to do it for you. So you'll have to call your insurance company and say, you double charged me for this, or, this should have been covered. Like, you have to get used to like making the calls and like standing up for yourself every day. And it did make my life, infinitely more rewarding for sure. And I would just tell people, especially now, it feels like there are more and more advances being made, to make this not such a scary disease for people, to make it, palatable at least, and to, get to the point where you can just take a pill, where you don't have to go through having all of the chemo, the radiation. I mean, every story is different and every cancer diagnosis is a little bit different. So don't give up. It can really end up working in your favor.
Holy moly, what a great conversation between the two of you. I have learned so many things. A few takeaways that I have is exactly what you were just saying, Jen, right there. Like, use the resources, as both Jerry and you were saying, use the resources when you find out they're out there. Know that you aren't alone, even though you might feel like you are, and then do whatever you can to make yourself as happy as you can be and as comfortable as you can be.
That's right.
Excellent. Well said at the very end there, Jen. Jerry, thank you so much for being a part of this. I really appreciate your input. Jen, thank you so much. I do know the one place that you talked about is Look Good, Feel Better.
Yes,
That's a
I can
resource
send
out there.
you, I can send links or, drop those in somewhere. But yeah, I would love to include several resources for anybody going through this for the first time or facing a new diagnosis for a loved one. So
Perfect. That sounds absolutely great. We'll have that in our descriptions below. So check those links out. Thank you all very much for joining us for another diversity and inclusion speaker series. Johnmeyer, thank you so much. Jerry, thank you so much. And we will see you all next time. Take care.
bye, everybody.
And I think to myself, what a wonderful